Introduction. When many people think of the book of Job, they often summarize it like this. A righteous man suffers for no reason, but in the end, he endures in faith and God restores his blessings. It sounds like a simple story of suffering and reward. But is it really that simple? Is Job merely about good people get rewarded, bad people get punished? Or does it contain something far deeper about human suffering, faith, and God's silence? In truth, the real message of Job is profound. It challenges us with questions about the mystery of suffering, the limits of a reward and punishment, worldview, and the call to hold on to faith even when God seems silent. 2. The background of Job. The story goes like this. Job was a righteous man who enjoyed prosperity. But Satan challenged Job's faith, asking God to test him. God allowed it. Suddenly, Job lost everything: his health, his wealth, and his family. 3 friends came to him, Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. Instead of comforting him, they accused him, "This must be your fault. You must have sinned." But Job knew he had done nothing wrong. What Job didn't know and could not know was the conversation between God and Satan. Job never realized that his suffering was a test. In his pain, Job argued with his friends and even cried out against God. Yet, after long silence and reflection, Job finally recognized God is far beyond human understanding. He is the Almighty One. In the end, Job was reconciled with God, reconciled with his friends, and was blessed even more than before. On the surface, it looks like a fairy tale with a happy ending. But the book of Job is not simple at all. It is a meditation on the mystery of suffering, the transcendence of God, and the true meaning of faith. Most scholars believe Job was written around the 5th century B.C., after Israel returned from Babylonian exile. The people came back home with hope, but reality was harsh. Life was still full of struggles. The old way of thinking that suffering must be punishment and prosperity must be reward could no longer explain their reality. Out of this crisis of faith came a new insight, and that is the background of Job. 3. A proper understanding of Job. 1. It's not about the cause of suffering. Many think Job is a book that explains why we suffer. But that is a misunderstanding. Job's suffering did not come because of sin. It came as an unexplained trial. And isn't this like our own lives? We face sickness, economic crisis, sudden accidents, often without fault of our own. In those moments, our faith is shaken, and we may even cry out against God. But Job's cry was not only to escape suffering, it was a desperate appeal. God, return to your true self, the one who defends the widow and the orphan. So Job is not a book about explaining suffering. It is a book about seeking God in the midst of suffering. 2. The mystery of suffering, the mystery of faith. Much of our pain in life cannot be explained. Faith does not mean we discover the reason. Faith means we trust in God's transcendence. Jesus said, "Even the hairs of your head are all numbered." Matthew 10:28-33. And John 3:16 reminds us that God loved the world so much that he gave his only Son. When we recall this, we can endure, knowing that even in silence and mystery, God's love is unshaken. 4. Reflection. We want everything to make sense in our logic. But the truth is, much of reality lies beyond us. Even modern astrophysics says that most of the universe is made up of dark energy, 68.3%, and dark matter, 26.8%. The word dark here doesn't mean black in color. It simply means unknown. Scientists admit they don't know what it is. But instead of saying we don't know, they call it dark, a way of naming their ignorance. This shows us even science, advanced as it is, cannot explain the deepest mysteries. In John 9, the disciples asked Jesus, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" The common belief then was that suffering must be caused by sin or the devil. But Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him." In other words, suffering is not for judgment, but can become the very place where God's love is revealed. We too must ask, are we like Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, quick to judge others in their pain? And when storms strike our own lives without explanation, The book of Job speaks to us with comfort. God may seem silent, but he never abandons us. Job and the dark night of the soul. The book of Job also connects with what spiritual writers call the dark night of the soul. The dark night is a stage of faith when God seems absent, silent, and far away, even though the believer is sincere and faithful. St. John of the Cross described it as a deep, painful purification of the soul. Prayers feel unanswered. God feels distant. Yet, through this emptiness, faith is refined and purified. Just as Job struggled with God's silence but came to a deeper understanding, so the dark night is not a sign of abandonment. It is a path towards spiritual maturity. 5. Conclusion. The book of Job reminds us, even when God seems silent, he is still caring for us. So hold on to faith. Wait with hope. Trust his goodness. As written on the wall of a bomb shelter in Cologne during the Nazi era, even though the sun is hidden, I believe in the sun. Even when I cannot feel love, I believe in love. Even when God is silent, I still believe in God. And if this reflection has touched you, I invite you to walk this journey of faith with us. Please like this video if it inspired you, and subscribe for more reflections on Scripture, faith, and life. Together, let us seek God's presence even in the silence.